a model that I choose to live by, and I think I've told you about this before. It's something that I got from my days with the NAACP. Is no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent issues. And when I remind myself of that, I got the ability to talk to anybody, right? Because as I mentioned before, right, I think at the end of the day, we all care about public safety, right? I don't care if you think you're on the left, you think you're on the right, you think you're in the middle. We all care about public safety. And that's the permanent issue, right? So if we can have that as the main goal and keep the main thing, then we can have those tough conversations of how do we get there.
Hey,
right?
it's Breaking Barriers, the diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging podcast. We're here for real talk. We're not afraid to go there. And we want you to come away emboldened and energized to take action and make change.
We believe our diversity, our differences, when joined together by a common set of ideals, makes us stronger.
When I set out to help someone, it is my intention to do just that. I'm not trying to do anything other than meet somebody at their humanity.
Welcome back. Happy 2024 to the world out here. We are back for another episode, our first episode. We are actually recording of the year called Top Rank Breaking Barriers, the DEIMB podcast, brought to you by your Silver's diversity sponsor, Rise to Greatness. Thanks so much for your support. My name is Anthony Arrington. I'm one of your co-hosts here with my homegirl,
Joy Briscoe. I am back and excited for 2024. And we have a guest today. This is going to be a great conversation. So I cannot wait to get started, and sending well wishes to our other partner who couldn't be with us today, Nick Ford, but he's here in spirit. And again, it's going to be a great conversation.
Absolutely. We are as we think about our guest today. Let me set you up, and then he's got a long bio, so I'll skim through that, and you can find his bio online on the website. We want to talk to you, man. We ain't trying to read. We're ready to talk. But if you think about one of the systems created in America, and you think about what one of the systems that's had the most significant negative impact on marginalized populations, especially Black people, it's the criminal justice system, no question. And the disproportionality in the number of arrests that we see, the number of convictions, imprisonment, probation status of Black people compared to white people, it's just staggering. It is just absolutely staggering. And so why is that the case? And that's what we're going to talk about today. And that's what we're so excited to have our guest today. Kameron Middlebrooks is his name. Cam Middlebrooks is a passionate civil rights and social rights agent for change. He began serving as a youth rep in the NAACP Board of Directors in 2008. He served there for 4 years. Before joining that staff, he was a field organizer for Barack Obama. He has been a regional organizer in the Midwest for the NAACP, the youngest ever to do that position, the youngest ever, the young warrior. As a regional director, he organized voting campaigns. He registered over 15,000 people in the Midwest. He's done a lot of work with Iowa, Nebraska, NAACP. In 2017, Cam spent time working for the Evelyn K. Davis Center to assist development associates working on small business and nonprofits. That's in Des Moines, Iowa, the Des Moines, Iowa area. And then he transitioned to Iowa State Extension and did some work as well. A ton of community work he has done, but right now he's serving right now as a field director for Reform Alliance. And I want him to tell you about that organization because it's an amazing organization. So I don't want to spend a lot of time on that. What I will tell you is when you see the recording come out, check out the YouTube and check out the video, and you'll be able to hear his entire biography because he's an accomplished young Black man. And we love it. So welcome, Kameron.
Hey, thank you guys for having me, man. Joy, Anthony, it's always good when I get a chance to catch up with you. I know most of it's been virtual, can't wait till the weather clears, like to see y'all in person.
Right.
Yes.
Dude, we got to go. Joy, I don't know if you know this, man, but the first time I met Anthony was, man, this might have been 2016, 2015. I was with his uncle Didi. I got to know Deidre, very well with the time in NAACP. And we just happened to walk into the same soul food restaurant. And he's like, that's you right there.
We just happen to be in the same place getting something to eat. And I'm like, Cam?
You were with Deidre Doolin. I love Deidre.
Yes.
I love Deidre. Deidre's a great guy. He is.
Yes. Shout out to Deidre Doolin, NAACP president in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, who's done a lot of work for the state, and we appreciate him. So, yeah, let's let's get at it. Let's have a conversation, man. Let's talk about, tell us a little bit about Reform Alliance, kind of how that organization came about, and kind of what you do. Kind of tell us about that.
Sure. So, Reform Alliance, it's 2024 now, right? So this will actually be our 5th year in operation. So we're very, very new organization in the grand scheme of things, focused on criminal justice reform across the country. But the unique thing about Reform Alliance is we are the only organization, at least that I know of, that is exclusively focused on transforming the supervision system in America, right? How we got started. Let's talk about that, right? So you guys, I know you two know, and some of these viewers may have heard of a rapper by the name of Meek Mill, somebody who is roughly a similar age of mine, right? Mid 30s, had been on probation ever since he was a teenager. And about 7 years ago, he was in New York, for work, business, whatever reason, and popped a wheelie on a motorcycle. Now, you, I, or anybody listening or viewing this did that, right? We most likely might get a stern looking from a police officer, maybe a citation. In Meek's case, because he was on probation, he got technically violated, and the judge overseeing his case sent him to prison for a 2 to 4 year term.
Wow.
Right. Again, Joy, he didn't commit a new crime, right? Mm-hmm. He technically violated his probation, and that resulted in a 2 to 4 year prison term. But now let's back up a little bit. In the time that Meek, from high school to that time, he had become an uber successful rapper, multimillionaire, developed relationships with some very key and influential people, right? Jay-Z's company was managing him at the time, developing relationships with folks like Robert Kraft of the New England Patriots, Michael Rubin, who at the time was the co-owner of his hometown Philadelphia 76ers. And he asked Michael to attend his court hearing with him so Michael could actually see what was going on. And, from my estimation, I think at that hearing when he was sentenced to 2 to 4 years, Michael really identified that we're living in two worlds, right? Two different systems in the criminal justice world, right? Where he could see a friend of his not commit a new crime, but go to prison. And, that group of folks and others really took a leadership role to try to help Meek out of his situation. But more conversations occurred. And I think the question that they had to ask themselves is, if this could happen to Meek Mill, multimillionaire, influential friend group, but he can still go to prison, what about somebody who doesn't have the resources that Meek had? So out of those conversations was birthed the Reform Alliance. And in the 5 years that we've been around, we've actually passed 18 bills in 11 different states, creating a pathway for over 700,000 people to exit the system. But in our estimation, it doesn't stop there, right? We definitely want to get people out of the system of supervision, but we also want to set them up for stability. So you'll see a lot of our legislation at the state level and even at the federal level will include incentives or things that we know drive down recidivism, so folks can start to get back on the right track while they're under supervision.
Cam, I love that you're sharing that, because I want to talk a little bit about it, and bear with me because we've had these conversations before, but sure. I think right now in this political climate, we're actually recording this, all of us, from the state of Iowa. And so when you talk about these type of initiatives and you talk about getting people out of the system, how is that being received? Like, again, you're actually talking about legislation and things of that. So tell us a little bit about like how that's being received and what some of the strategies that you often use to actually move some of that through.
Yeah. Well, this is a good question. How's it received? I think that depends on who you're talking to, right? I can go to some of our friends on the left, and, criminal justice has been something that we've been engaged with for a very long time. All the ways. I can go back to when I got started the NAACP, 2006 and 2007. Sitting on the board, I was part of a group that got to formulate our strategic plan, and we created 5 game changers. And one of those game changers was criminal justice. Another one was education. Another one was economic sustainability. And then we always care about voting, and we always care about youth activation, right? When I look at an initiative like Reform, I think when you take those 3 components and you combine them, criminal justice reform, education, economic sustainability, then you can find a way to talk to anybody about it, right? You got those on our right, our friends on the right, who criminal justice reform may not always be top of mind. But I tell you what is, workforce is always top of mind, right? Education, whether we agree or disagree on how it is put forth in our state, it is still top of mind, right? How do we upskill people to get them back in the workforce? And when you figure out how to talk to somebody, you talk their language and you keep it in the same framing, right? At the end of the day, We all have the same goal. We might just have different ways of getting there or different ways to talk about getting there.
Let's kind of expand on that, because I think you and I, we've had these conversations before as well, Cam. And, when you think about history and you think about the context, the history and the context of policing and prison, and you think about as Joy said, the political tension in our state, you have to navigate that as Cam the man. You have to navigate that as Cam the professional. How are you navigating that space to ensure that ultimately, like you said, what both sides of the aisle want? We want a civil state that we can all thrive in, I would think. So how is that working for you, as Joy said, in the state of Iowa with the politically charged environment that we're in?
Well, the good part of it is I've been in Iowa damn near my entire life, right? So this is something that I've had to navigate, as Cam the man, even going back to Cam the boy, right? But for me, we, like you said, we talked about this, Anthony. I got to take it back to my roots, right?
Mm-hmm.
I always have to remember my personal why, right? And the reason for it, and be willing to have conversations with any and everybody. A model that I choose to live by, and I think I've told you about this before, it's something that I got from my days with the NAACP, is no permanent friends, no permanent enemies, only permanent issues. And when I remind myself of that, I got the ability to talk to anybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as I mentioned before, right, I think at the end of the day, we all care about public safety, right? I don't care if you think you're on the left, you think you're on the right, you think you're in the middle. We all care about public safety, and that's the permanent issue, right? So if we can have that as the main goal and keep the main thing, then we can have those tough conversations of how do we get there, right? And a great deal of my work with reform and even before reform has always been about how do we build coalitions, right? How do we take like-minded people and get them together? How do we take unlike-minded people, strange bedfellows, and get them together on one cause? And that's one thing that we've done, with Reform Alliance. Both of your organizations are a part of our broader coalition called Iowans United for Opportunity, which if folks want to dig in more than that, they can visit iowansunited.com. But you guys know we got some strange bedfellows in this coalition, right?
Yeah.
On one side of the aisle, I got the NAACP, AFL-CIO, right? On the other side of the aisle, we have Americans for Prosperity, which is a Koch brothers-backed organization, right? We got Faith and Freedom Coalition, which has been doing a great deal of work around the presidential cycle this year. But guess what? They've actually been involved in criminal justice reform for 10 years. So longer than just reform has been involved, right? So it's very interesting to me when I talk to some of our conservative brothers and sisters who understand, that there's a need to get people back in the workforce. They understand that there's a need to upskill this group of individuals, right? And then match that with folks like Betty Andrews and NAACP, man. Just imagine you got the left and the right coming at you at the same time, man. Mm-hmm. It's a magical thing to see when that happens, but we have to do more of that. And what these folks were willing and able to do was to sit down with others and have deliberative conversations and deliberative dialogues about how can we make our public safety system better for our communities, for our families, and for Iowa at the end of the day.
This is a model for Congress, right?
Hey, yeah.
We got a lot of things
for Congress. Can for Congress. No, you make a very good point. And the one thing that I know is important, and Joy and Nick and I often talk about this in this space in order to get work done, is that level of emotional intelligence. Mm-hmm. That challenge, because if the reality is sitting in front of us three here, and I think we understand this, it takes a level of emotional intelligence to do the work that you do, Cam. Because at the end of the day, you said it, you have to go back to Cam the man and Cam the boy. And those cultural and lived experiences can clash with your work. So it's amazing that you're able to do what you do. And it takes people that have that type of emotional and intellectual intelligence to navigate those spaces. When you're sitting across the table from people who may not have the lived experience you do. So I kind of want to talk about, kind of segue to that, because this work has proven to be successful. It's not as successful in Iowa yet, but I was reading about SB 838 in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And I watched that video with the mayor and Meek and those men behind that
With
podium
the governor and me.
with the governor,
Yeah.
Nice.
And one of the things I'm wondering from your lens, and maybe here in Iowa, this might be a stacked question. Darn it, Joey. I'm up. This might be a stacked question, but I got to get it in. How do you feel that work in Philadelphia? How can it be scaled and replicated? How are you doing that here? And more
Yeah.
importantly, and maybe this is a follow-up question, but how do we get the people that are impacted by the Meek Mills of the world, by the Jay-Z's of the world, that we need to go to the polls? How do we get them to see that their vote does matter? And there's proof right there in Philadelphia that because of that governor, because of the votes of the people that put that man in office with power and leverage, this happens. And this affects your dude that hangs out with you right next door. This isn't about people that aren't affected. These are the real people that are affected in our community. So how do we, that's kind of a two-part question. How do you feel that the legislation can
Anthony's
be
gonna get us going,
leveraged here?
Kim.
How
That
can it be
might be
leveraged
triple
here?
stack. So I think there was 3 questions in there.
Was
That
it
might
three
be a
stack?
triple stack.
All right.
It
Let's
was a
talk about
triple.
the
let me
legislation.
try
How do we,
to piece that apart. Okay,
I'm
let's
a
start
horrible
with
guy today.
let's start with Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
I mean, what a momentous moment for reform, right? For me, for the criminal justice reform community, right? That was the first community, first state that we went into, right? The first bill that we started working on. And we put a great deal of effort in that, from Meek and Michael Rubin at the board level down to our staff, so on and so forth. That was a monumental moment for us, right? And we learned a lot on the way that I think we've been able to transfer to the other states that we're working in, right? And one of the things that we learned is there's some really great organizations already doing work on the ground, right? And when you come in as a national organization and you have all the best intentions at play, if you're not actively including them in the process and giving them an opportunity to lead in their own right, and being collective with your movement, right? It's just not going to move as fast as possible, as fast as it could be. And I think we learned that lesson and we switched it up and we got the results that we wanted to, right? So when we look at states like Iowa and Virginia and Georgia and Florida and other states that we have active legislations like Illinois and Chicago, right? We are super focused on this coalition piece, right? And ensuring that we're doing things from a grassroots level. Even if we are that national organization coming in from top down, right? We're doing it in a grassroots way, right? When you look at some of these active states that we've been in, in the past year and a half, we've hired people from those states, similar to myself, right, to do the organizing work, right? Because we have those connections, right? I can meet Anthony and say, hey, I know your Uncle Didi, right? Mm-hmm. And then Anthony can connect me to Joy because I'm a known entity in this state, right? Versus somebody flying in, getting something passed, and then leaving. It's not just about passing the bills for us, right? We got to pass the bills to the policy makers, right? But we also have to do the narrative change of what it means to be a justice-impacted individual, right? We're talking about, especially in the bill, we'll most likely talk about our bill in Iowa a little bit later, but a lot of these people on probation, right? They're not out here murdering people, right? I'm somebody who's been on probation. We've made mistakes. Mm-hmm. We're not terrible people. Mm-hmm. We've made mistakes. We got to go on probation, but we shouldn't have to stay on probation to be supervised for the rest of our lives, right? We should be rehabilitated. That's what the probation system was initially intended for. The problem is, right, you see a lot of people languishing on probation and having to live with that trap door, right, that I call the trap door, which is a technical violation. Mm-hmm. Do I go to work or do I miss this PO meeting? Well, I got to pay. I got to feed my family. Mm-hmm. But if I miss this PO meeting, I risk going back to jail, right? Do I, Meek's situation is a story I love to tell because it's as a father, I know what it means. He's a man of a certain caliber of dollars, right? So he sent his kids to private school in New Jersey. Every time he went to drop his child off or pick his child up, he's technically violating his probation. Breaking the law, right? Not a new crime, but a technical violation, right? And he's risking his freedom to be a father, right? That holds a heavy heart to me.
Yes.
So these are things that, we've seen in other states, we see in our state, right? So it just gives me more of an emphasis to do something about it. Now, to your second question, I think it's the second question. You talked about how do we engage our young folk, right? Is that
That's
what
a
you're
great
asking?
segue, yeah, because you just gave the example of how young folks are literally impacted by this. We
Yeah,
know, all
Hmm.
of us know a lot of young folks who are in that position who
yeah.
had to make
Cam,
that
you
decision.
Cam, you have the stat too, because what is it, like 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 U.S. citizen that is impacted somehow by something in the justice system?
Yeah,
It's so
yeah.
much,
It's
so
yeah,
often
you're
it's
about right.
certain
Yeah.
faces, but it's not, it's almost everyone.
It's almost everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
we're you're not too far, right? What they call 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. You know what I mean? It's like 4 degrees of the justice system, right?
Yes.
We know
Right.
somebody in our family, if not us individually, who's been impacted by the justice system. Somebody very close to us, a friend, family, cousin, niece,
Yeah.
nephew, right? That's a question when you talk about voter engagement or civic engagement. I think I like to see it, right?
Yeah.
You know, I think what I hear in a lot of my work, because I've done political work, partisan work, nonpartisan work, right? A lot of folks just care about getting people to the polls, right? Which is very important to get to the polls and vote. But I always encourage people, it can't stop there, right?
Right.
You guys remember summer of 2020, right? We got George Floyd. I'm sure that y'all had demonstrations in your neck of the woods, similar to what we had, here in Des Moines. And when I would be out in the streets talking to these young folks and hearing all this pain and passion, the number one thing that I try to get off to them is don't just live in this moment. This moment is crazy, but don't stay in this moment. Be a part of the movement or create your own movement, right?
Yes.
Because it takes not just showing up to the polls to vote for the president, the governor, the state house official, the mayor, so on and so forth. But we got to start showing up to these meetings afterwards and holding people
Yes.
accountable. You
Yes.
know what I
Yes.
mean? We got to run for office ourselves, right? So
Yes.
how do you engage somebody? You tell them that there's no ceiling over their head. If
Hmm.
you don't like the decisions that are being made at your city, state, or national, do something about it. And that may
Hmm.
be you go run for office. It may be you go join a campaign so your voice is heard. It may be showing up to that city council meeting or going up to the Capitol any day of the week, Monday through Friday, and talking to your legislature. It's about being
Right.
engaged at every level. And I think when
Yeah.
people see the opportunity of engagement, then they see the opportunity that they actually have voice, right? I'm gonna tell a
Yeah.
quick story, but the way I got involved with the NAACP was by happenstance, right? I showed up to a meeting and they just so happened to be elected officers and my name got called. And I just had a problem with saying no at the time. But I'm glad I said yes because they took me to the national convention that next year. We were in Washington, D.C. To be honest with you, Joy and Anthony, I just wanted to go on vacation. I just wanted to get
Yep.
out of Iowa, right? I'm
Yeah.
16, 17. Like that's where my head was, right?
Right.
But we're in DC, summer 2006, and we marched from the convention center down to the nation's capital. And
Mm.
every single state went and met with either the congressman or congresswoman or the staffer. And this was the first time that I saw that I had voice. These people were listening to us, right?
Right.
Now we
Right.
did bum rush the Capitol. We made sure, you know what I mean? We was knocking on doors.
Yeah.
They
Yeah. Yeah.
handled it, but I got stationed in life outside of a football field or a track and field oval, right?
Hmm.
And I got to see that. And I think when people get to see that they have station in life and that they truly have voice, that engagement level will rise.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. And I guess as I think about that, and the reason I wanted to ask you that question, because the work that you do is so close, I'll speak from my lived experience, so close to people I know that I can have conversations in a barber shop or at a restaurant or just sitting at home on my couch watching TV. If I can reach one person by saying, that your vote and your civic engagement does matter. Let me tell you about Cameron. Michael, our homie that's on probation, and remember he got sent back to jail 2 weeks ago? Do you know that the work Cam's doing in Des Moines and this organization, if we had people in power who voted, that wouldn't have happened to our homie. Like
Hmm.
so to me, there's opportunity with that work to connect civic engagement to real activity. And so
Yeah.
that's why I want to thank you for what you're doing and kind of ask that type of question.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. I appreciate that.
yeah,
I
Joy, I'm sorry.
definitely agree, because so often people don't see the correlation between politics and government and their everyday life. And so I think
Right.
that we have to talk about it in a way that it definitely draws a parallel to what's happening. And so,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Joe, I think the problem is, a lot of people think of politics and they think of federal government, right? They think of, the political parties. And I think that gets people, they see the disingenuousness of it sometimes, right? I choose to think about politics differently, man. I did a program with the Kellogg Foundation based out of Dayton, Ohio. And the way that they described politics was common people coming together to solve common problems,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's what we need to be doing. We all have common problems, whether we identify as black or white, Christian, non-Christian, conservative, liberal. There's
Right.
common problems that we're all facing that if we just had the time, if we gave each other the opportunity to have, real dialogue, not debate, but real dialogue about how we can solve some of these common problems, things will work out.
Right. Yeah. No. Good point. So, Cam, I want to shift a little bit here. I want to talk about you, Cam, the person.
Yeah.
I think like I said, I met you several years ago. I don't want to say almost 10 years ago, but
Yeah.
why do you do this work, Cam? Why does Cam do this work?
It's a great question, man. I think that, and my answer has evolved over the years, to be honest with you. There's been times where I felt like I've been obligated to do it, just given some of the roles and positions that I've had, and the fact that I know certain individuals listen to me, right? But when I really thinking about it, because you kind of prepped me that you're gonna ask this question, I really thought hard about it last night, man.
Yeah.
And so this work specifically, man. So I'm a child of a father who I didn't know growing up. And when we first got connected, we talked, there was phone calls when I was younger, but when we got connected, when I would say that I had my wits together, he was writing me letters from prison, he was incarcerated, so I'm a child of a justice. I'm justice impacted that way. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then early 20s, got pulled over with marijuana possession. So I'm justice impacted a little bit more directly that way. Right.
Mm-hmm.
I was counting the number of cousins and family members that are incarcerated or in a halfway house right now, right?
Yes.
Or on paper right now. So I'm indirectly impacted that way, right? And it just, I don't know, maybe it's the empathy in me that I just care so damn much, man. And I know I can do something about it, so why not do something about it, right?
Yeah.
And then I also think about, my upbringing with the NAACP, where criminal justice and economic sustainability and education have always been things that I've truly cared about. And I've tried to do it on the for-profit route, trying to make some money myself, man. And I realize I'm not that money motivated. It's nice to have nice things, but if my community's struggling, I still feel a gap,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I know we've said it a couple times on this call, and we've talked. I know you're relatively young guy, and I guess I kind of want to expand on that because it sounds like maybe it was a moment, right? You've got a moment coupled with the lived experience. You've got your trip to DC that really had an impact on you and showed you that you had a voice. But it's almost as if it was an accumulation of all your lived experience that sort of hit that moment, right? And you and I share those experiences. I'm a child of a father who the first 10 years of my life was behind bars. That's all I remembered seeing him as, and I can countless number of cousins and relatives in prison or on probation. So we all have that lived experience. I'm almost wondering, do we need to create more aha events in Iowa to get more young people civically engaged and to see the value of the work that you do? Because we can't get everybody to DC, but do you see that? Can you talk about your thoughts around that a little bit?
Well, I think there's definitely room for that, right? But in addition to that, I think we need more men like you, Anthony, who's just willing to have a conversation. 'Cause I know you. When you see somebody, you're gonna have a conversation with them, right?
Yeah.
And I think the events are nice and great, but to have somebody see something in you that you don't quite see in yourself, and have them to be able to articulate that to you one-on-one is important and impactful, because that's what happened to me time and time again, right? You got me to DC that first time. I felt that I had voice, but I wasn't all the way bought in. You know what I mean? It took other individuals within the NAACP and out to continue to tell me that, hey, you're more than just the athlete you think you are. You know what I mean? And that was a hard pill for me to swallow, dog, because I thought I was going to the pros, man. But
yeah. But hey, I thought I was going to be Sugar Ray Leonard, so I get it, man. Yeah.
But I had enough people, continue to see the potential in me and continue to breathe life in me. right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't just the events, because I think the events, again, that's just a moment, right? It's night. They're great to have. They're good catch-alls. But what I really think needs to occur more is some one-on-one mentorship within our
Yeah.
community, right?
Yes.
Getting back into the schools, and not just high schoolers. You know what I mean? I think a lot of people tend to go to high school because we know they're almost to graduation in the real world, right?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
sometimes it can be too late at that point, right?
Hmm.
And we're
Hmm.
missing a lot of opportunity with kids in middle school and elementary school to start putting
Right.
that battery in their back as
Yeah.
early on as that.
Sure. Sure. You- what keeps you up at night, Cam? What keeps Cam up at night as you think about your work and your lived experience and
Man,
what your missions are? What keeps you up at night?
my family, man, my daughter and my son. I got a 15-year-old boy who he's shoot he he just finished up driver's ed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which that's it's a great moment, right? In one way, but it's also a very scary moment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because now he's gonna be on these roads by himself. My,
Yeah.
my daughter's 8, so I got some years to wait there, right? But
Yeah.
the fear is the same, and I'm real big on, this is cliche, right? But leaving the world a better place than which you came. But I'm
Yeah.
doing it because of Cameron, Andrew Middlebrooks, and Samaya Lynn Middlebrooks, right? That's
Yeah.
that's my guiding light. Right? That's my why in many ways, and seeing what their future is going to be like, and are we doing the right things now as adults to cultivate a place where our kids can really thrive is really what shakes me up at night.
Yeah. That's good to hear, man. Um, I want to, as we kind of wrap up here, um, are there any is there any bit of advice, if you if to, as you think about, I mean, there's a million things that someone could do to be a Cameron, and I think you said it earlier that the state of Iowa, the nation, and others, they need more one-on-one. Uh, they need more cams. They need more people that can influence. If you had one bit of advice for how to encourage and how to motivate, what would you tell our listeners to
Man,
be able to find more cams in the world? Is there something that you would say?
well, what I would say to that person, right, is, I'm looking down because I'm looking at
Oh,
this
that's
bracelet,
okay.
man,
Yeah.
because this is my reminder, right? This is my advice damn near every day. It says two things on here, man. So the first thing it says is live resilient. And then the second thing it says is resilience lives in you,
Can show
right?
it up. Can you show it? Can we see it? Yeah. Okay. Gotcha. I see a
Yeah,
little bit of
live
it. Okay.
resilient.
Yeah. Yeah.
So a friend of mine, Kanisha Woods, she has this. This is from her business. Resiliency lives in you. So the
Yes.
name of the group, man. I hope you don't mind if I do this plug, man. But
Please do. Please
I
do.
I put this on maybe 3 months ago, and I ain't took it off, man, since last time I saw her. But Kanisha Woods, uh, her company is Live Resilient, and you can visit her website at www.resiliencinc.live. Um, but that's my piece of advice, man. We come from, especially folks that look like us and think like us. We come from adversity, right? We we
Yes.
we know what it means to be resilient every single day of our lives. And I constantly remind myself the resiliency lives in me. So whatever the world's got to throw at me, man, or the barriers that I got to face, it's nothing that I can't overcome, right? And truly believing and having that confidence within yourself, within your faith, you right, within your community is how you overcome some of those hard obstacles in life. And when you find somebody that a young kid, you know what I mean, whatever age, right, middle school, high school, young adult, and you see somebody that has the ability to overcome and fight through adversity, that's the potential that's God given, right? And you have to
Yes.
cultivate that, right? And that's my biggest thing. What do they say at the airport? See something, say something, right? When you see that, say something to individuals, say something to your colleagues, your friends, so you can get that individual more opportunities to continue to live out their dream.
Well, and I think as I listened to you talk about your lived experiences and your experiences, that you weren't a perfect man, and I think
Mhm.
sometimes we're always looking for the perfect man or woman, the perfect child, and when we see those troubled kids or we see those kids that have gone through issues, so it's easy for people with no empathy to back off. But if you see the talent somewhere, if you see the potential, even the kid that got arrested for assault at 17, like myself, or even the kid that got arrested for marijuana like yourself, even the kids that haven't had perfect lives can do something. And we can teach them to be civically engaged, because at that age I wasn't, I think sometimes we forget that. And so coming from someone like yourself, I think for the people to hear you, like I said, you're a relatively young guy, but a lot of lived
I
experience.
appreciate you for calling me young, man. I really do. I just hit 35.
Did you notice the word relatively?
I was trying to bypass that.
Hey, did you notice the word relatively? I just had to slip.
I did, but it went one thing out the other, man.
All depends on what group you're in, my man. I'm gonna give you the young credit today. But
I guess it's all about perspective, right? Yeah.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But no, not like real talk though. If you think about it, every movement in our country, at least in my experience, in my history, every movement in our country has been led by young people.
Yeah.
People don't know how old Dr. King was when he died, right? Like a young man.
Yeah. I'm older than what he older than what he was when he passed away, right?
Yes, you're older than absolutely.
That's crazy, and that's crazy to think about. But I think it's so true, man. I think when we chase perfection, or we just only look for perfection, we lose out on progress.
Right.
Right. So that 17-year-old who committed assault, or that 20-year-old who got a marijuana possession, if somebody was looking for perfection in us, they wouldn't have allowed us to progress in our lives, to evolve into the men that we are today, right?
Yes.
I think we got to take that approach with mentorship, with policy, with everything in our lives, right? With our,
absolutely.
I think with my kids all the time, man, because Lord knows they ain't perfect, but
man.
I got his patience and progress, right?
Yes, good Lord. You telling the truth there. Well, Kameron Middlebrooks, you all, field director in Iowa for Reform Alliance, doing amazing work. Thank you so much for joining us today. Appreciate your words on breaking barriers. We truly appreciate your time and insight. So I want to thank you for that.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much for giving me the platform.
Good deal. Joy, we love you. Joy had an internet connection, folks, but she certainly provided some insight, and we miss our partner, Nick, today. But a big shout out to our silver sponsors, our diversity sponsor, Rise of Greatness. We also want to give thanks to our friends of Breaking Barriers, Community Savings Bank, Tyler Lincoln Barnes, Dental Services, Bankers Trust as well. So we want to thank you all for your support. We'd love to hear from you all. Please hit us up, hit Cam up. Cam, you want to drop some emails, some social media? Folks want to reach out to you?
Yeah, man. So they can shoot me an email at Kameron at Reform Alliance. That's KAMERON at Reform Alliance. Or you could hit me up on, I don't even know what's my Instagram or my Facebook. I ain't on Twitter, but Instagram, I think it's no_cool name and cool spelled with a K.
All right.
Always active on there, man.
Yeah, search up reformalliance.org, I believe it is. If you want to learn a little bit more about that program, they're always looking for coalition members in Iowa and the other states that they're in. Looking for storytellers, folks who have been through the system. So please reach out to Cam. We'd love to hear from you. Keep hitting us up. Send your questions, your comments in to info@toprankculture.com. Special thanks to our listeners. Without you, we're not here. We can't leverage this important outlet without your listenership. So please subscribe, rate, and review us when you see these out online. This episode will be dropping in probably another 30 days or so. So we really appreciate it. As Joy comes back in, Joy, we are wrapping up here. So giving Cam his flowers today. And so we're just letting people know to share and like online as we kind of wrap up. Any last thoughts from you, Joy? We appreciate
Not at
you
all.
coming
My
back
apologies, everybody out there where I'm recording at today. There's a lot of people in here, and so sometimes the Wi-Fi does funny things. So
Listen, we learned during COVID that even the most professional, the most multi-million-dollar media companies in the world rock just like we do.
Exactly.
So,
exactly.
Everybody's
Good.
got an internet connection.
I know I missed some great stuff though. I know that Cam, you talked about already what we're doing in Iowa already.
Well, actually, you know what? I didn't get a chance to go into the bill. I think that's important to hit.
Yes. We're reversing, folks. We got the sponsorship in to thank you, but let's have that conversation. My fault. Let's talk about that, please.
So the bill that we're working on in Iowa, so we introduced this bill at the beginning of 2023. So this is an earned credits probation bill, right? So in essence, what this bill will do for individuals that are on probation, they're going to be able to earn time off the back end of their term. three different ways. So the first way is a discharge credit. So what this does, for every month that you're in compliance, whether that be you got to go see your PO, you got to take a certain class, you got to, drop a UA, whatever the terms of your probation is, every single month you're in compliance, we're going to be able to knock 14 days off at the back end of your term. And that's cumulative, right? So every single month, you're going to get those 14 days off if you're in compliance.
Love
What
that.
that does is it incentivizes good behavior while on supervision, right? But the two key credits that I really love, one is an education credit. So for every academic achievement, you can think high school diploma, high set equivalency, 2-year, 4-year degree, or even a vocational skills-based training, right? So you go through a reentry program, you go join a union, right? You get a certificate at the end of that. That's an academic achievement. For each achievement, you can earn 90-day reduction to the back end of your term, right? So think, if I got a 5-year term, man, I'm a year into community college. I get my 2-year degree. I go to a 4-year institution. I knock that 4-year institution off. That's 2 90-day reductions, right? You knocked off a half a year by getting your education and upskilling yourself. And then the third credit is a workforce credit. So for every 6 months of employment, which I believe our bill languages says is about an average of 30 hours per week, an individual is going to be able to earn an additional 30 days off of the back end of their term.
Nice.
The reason why the education and the workforce credit are so important, though, is because data shows when people are upskilling themselves and people are maintaining gainful employment, the chances of them recidivizing drops tremendously, right?
Yes.
So the good news that happened last year, we introduced it in the House last year in 2023. We passed the House with a very broad and bipartisan margin, 93-1. I want to give shout outs to Representative Holt, who was our floor manager out of Western Iowa, and Representative Phil Thompson, who was the chair of the Public Safety Committee, which it came out of. Both Republicans, by the way, right? But they were strong supportive of this piece of legislation for some of the reasons we talked about at the top of this podcast. Where we're at right now, because we're on a 2-year cycle, we have to get it passed in the Senate this year. And our coalition, our lobbyists, and all of our groups are earnestly working towards that happening this year. We're really excited, y'all, because right now, I would say, we're close to that finish line. We got to get the vote on the floor and get it signed by the governor. But the good news is, y'all, if this passes, in 5 years, this is going to positively impact taxpayers by $82 million. We'll save $82 million of taxpayer money. And it will positively impact 55,000 Iowans that are currently or will be on probation in the next 5 years.
And that tax saving money is through reduced, incarceration.
Reduced. Because think about
administrative costs, reduced to all of the costs that come with managing a parolee or a probation person, right?
Exactly.
And these are people that'll be in our workforce, right?
Right.
Like these are people that
we're going to get them upskilled. We're going to get them in the workforce, right? So there's the benefit to them, to their families, and their community, right? But also let's talk about the benefit to the justice system, right? If I'm a PO right now, I'm having to supervise a lot of people, right? I don't have the numbers for Iowa, but we talked about Pennsylvania earlier. Best practice in Pennsylvania was a 50-person caseload. But we saw in that state that some probation officers were having 100 to 150 people on their caseload, right? I don't know the numbers for Iowa, but I can guarantee you probation officers are having to deal with a whole lot more people than they anticipated. This gives them the ability to discharge early individuals that don't need that much supervision so they can focus their time on the folks that do need the most supervision.
Right. The humanity of the system at least, right? Well,
Cam,
thank you for sharing that.
I got one more question, Anthony.
Yeah, please.
Internet stopped me, but Cam, whenever I hear you talk about what you're doing in the work with reform, every time I'm super impressed with the way reform is able to engage people on both sides of the aisle, right? And again, we're in Iowa, so we just had a bunch of stuff come out about us and how we are for one party or the other. And I just think about how would you recommend as people, especially we're Black on here, right? So how would you recommend as Black people, or even Nick, he is an ally, right? How do you recommend that we get more of these type of initiatives passed and that we can get buy-in from both sides of the house and actually move things forward, because
Yeah.
you're doing it right, like
Yeah.
literally this is a model for it. And so how somebody's listening out there and learning about your work and they have something else coming down the pipeline, how would you recommend that they could build some movement and momentum
Sure.
behind initiatives that will benefit minoritized groups but ultimately benefit everyone?
Yeah.
So
Well, first you got to realize that the situation that we're in, right? We're in Iowa. We got a Republican governor, Republican leadership in the House and the Senate, right? That's the situation, right? So then what do you do with that next? Well, first off, you got to meet people where they are. And that's something I would tell anybody on any initiative, right? I can't expect everybody to be exactly where I'm at for whatever reason, because they may not have the lived experience, right? They may not want to dig into what some of their family members have done or haven't done, right? So they may not have that insight there, right? But they may just talk about the issue in a different way. So, for instance, with this public safety issue that we're trying to solve with supervision reform, right? What we do a lot of times, we don't talk about it as criminal justice reform. We'll talk about it as workforce development. So we'll figure out a different angle to have the same conversation, right? Point two, coalition building. Before you even get to that state house, I guarantee you there's a community organization that may not look like us, but has some of the same goals in mind, right? Whether it's a faith-based organization, a workforce development-based organization, this, that, and the third. Having a deliberative conversation with them, right? And I say the word deliberative conversation because I'm not talking about, we don't need to go out here and debate people, right? We've seen what debates do. I don't know if y'all watched some of these other debates, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not hearing a whole lot of policy change. I'm not hearing a whole lot of solutions, right?
Mm-mm.
But I guarantee it, a lot of people are tired of that on all sides, right? But what people can never be tired of is a robust, deliberative conversation about how we can solve common problems, right? So identifying what that common problem is, having the guts to go talk to somebody who may not look like you, may not think like you, right? But having the goal at the end of the day is, hey, they got a common problem just like me, right? When we talk about Black issues, we ain't talking. It's everybody's got these issues. We care about jobs. They care about jobs, right? We want safe roads. They want safe roads, right? We want more money in our pockets at the end of every week. They want more money in their pockets at the end of every week, right? So there's a commonality amongst all of it. We just got to be willing to figure out what that common goal is or what that common issue is, and be willing to have a discussion, a deliberative conversation, a deliberative discussion that's solution oriented at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Okay, partner, you can
No,
wrap us up, but I
Joy,
wanted us to capture that.
you
I knew it
absolutely
was.
to connect that dot, Joy. When you slipped off, one of the things that we talked about is the ability to do that. Right? He said, "Have the guts," and we connected what you were just asking him to the level of emotional intelligence and some of the work that we do, because it's very different. Everybody can't do what Cam does, right?
Mhm.
Everybody doesn't have the ability to sit across from a person who has a different lived experience and really have those common conversations, because they're clouded with cultural opinions or other things in their life that impact their ability to conversate about what's common. And so it takes that level of emotional intelligence and, as Cam just said in plain and simple words, guts to
Mhm.
talk
Yeah.
to people who don't look like you to get that work done. And so we appreciate your abilities to do that, Cam.
I was going to say I want to say this to that point, Anthony, right? Because everybody may not be there to be able to have that conversation, right? But that
Right,
doesn't mean you can't be in the room. Send somebody
right,
to be your mouthpiece who can, but
right,
still be in that room. Be
right,
engaged in the process, because you might learn how to have that conversation,
You
right?
right.
got to think
Great
If
point.
strategy.
you're never in the room, you ain't never going to get farther. You're never going to evolve, right?
And
Exactly.
that's such a great point, because sometimes, let's just admit it, we all put each other out of the room because
Yeah.
of for reasons that people don't view the conversation the same as you do or don't. But there are learning opportunities. That's a great point, Cam. That's a really
Yeah.
good point.
Because
Mhm.
one thing I do a lot, I'm very cognizant of it, given my history, right, in organizations or candidates that I've worked for. I'm not always the best messenger, right?
Yeah.
The message may never change, but the messenger may have to change
Yes,
given the audience,
Right.
right?
yes,
And being cognizant of that, right? Sometimes I might need to send Joy in there, right? I might need to send Anthony in there, right? Versus me, right? Or I might need to go
yeah,
talk to my conservative brothers and sisters, right? And say, hey, faith and freedom, I think you should have this conversation. Or Americans for Prosperity, I wish you could say this, right?
yeah,
But again, it takes that dialogue on the front end and at least building the trust up on the issue that you guys are aligned with before you can start making those moves.
Yeah. And that's self-awareness too, right? Like when you talk about emotional
Mm-hmm.
IQ, a lot of it is based off of being self-aware, how you are perceived too, and how you would like to be perceived and how you need to be. And they say like 90% of people are not self-aware, but you can grow your self-awareness. So thinking about what that's like, and you have to work on that and flex that emotional IQ, that self-aware muscle in there. You have to build off of that to do the work of DEI. And I sometimes think people don't, like you said, people don't think that, especially we're like, well, we Black. So no, you need to be self-aware too. If we want to make it.
You need to be maybe even more self-aware, right?
right.
Exactly.
Yeah, I play football. Keep the head on the swivel, man.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Thank you so much, Cam. Any other nuggets you want to drop, Joy, Cam, before we wrap it up here? We really, really appreciate you.
I think I hit y'all with all my nuggets, man.
You had the nuggets.
You did.
I will remind folks of this, man. And this again is something I live by. It keeps me steadfast in my work. But don't have any permanent friends or permanent enemies in this work. Just have permanent issues. Be willing and ready to work with whoever is willing and ready to work with you, and that's how we can make some change occur and make it sustainable as well. Yeah,
the train is moving, the bus is moving. Are you on or off? We'll figure out what seat you're in. But are you on the bus?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Cam. This has been good.
Hey,
thank you, audience, for your time. Again, we drop episodes twice per month on your favorite audio platform. So please tune in, and we'll let you know as soon as this drops. Take care.
Advancing equity is not a one-year project. It's a generational commitment.
There are too few people in the world willing to be the domino, too few people willing to take that fall.